It's been more than a year since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and since then, multiple states have taken action to restrict access to abortion, including the state of Iowa, where the Republican governor recently signed a 6-week abortion ban into law. That's where Vice President Kamala Harris was on Friday, hosting a forum in Des Moines where she advocated for protecting reproductive rights. After the event, I had a chance to sit down with the vice president for an exclusive interview on a wide range of topics, from immigration to Florida's new education standards to the 2024 race. But we began with the battle over abortion access. So we're here in Iowa. You just hosted this conversation about protecting reproductive freedom. What does this mean to you personally?
Well, it's about understanding that a fundamental freedom for the women of America has been attacked. And when I think about this issue and the fact that the highest court in our land just took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the women of America, and what that has meant in terms of depriving them of autonomy over their own bodies and depriving them of the ability to make decisions about their life and their future. You know, there's something underlying this approach that states like Iowa have taken that really suggests that that they don't trust women to be able to know what's in their best interest and make the decision accordingly. And I'll tell you, on this issue, I think it's very important to recognize and to be clear. One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling her what to do with her body.
The Des Moines Register recently had a poll that suggested 70% of women in the state of Iowa believe that abortion should be legal in all, if not most cases.
Yes.
And yet you had the governor who just passed this 6-week abortion ban. And so I'm curious if you are concerned that you're losing ground on this fight in multiple states.
Well, I am very concerned about what states have been passing in terms of laws since the Dobbs decision came down. For example, I started my career as a prosecutor and specialized in crimes of violence against women and children. The idea that in some of these states, they would say there's no exception even for rape or incest. And understand what that means. After someone has survived an act of violence to their body, a violation to their body, that these so-called leaders would suggest that she does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to her body next is immoral, outrageous and immoral. So I am concerned in a very profound way about what is happening around our country. But I'll also say this. We saw in the midterms when this issue was on the ballot in states from Kentucky to California, the people said, we stand in support of a woman's decision to make decisions about her own body and not her government. So I am concerned about what's been happening, but I also have faith in the people of America. For example, your point about the people and the women here in Iowa, to say that they're not going to stand for this profound violation of people's freedoms.
What can your administration do right now to try to ensure that women, especially in those states that have more restrictive laws, have access to abortion?
So we're doing a number of things focused on privacy. So we've been very concerned. For example, there are mobile apps that women use to track their cycles, and making sure that that information is private and not then given to law enforcement if they have chosen to criminalize healthcare providers, for example. We have done a lot of work to make clear to all states that they cannot, by law, deny emergency medical care to people, and then also protecting people's access to contraception, for example. But on the issue of medical care, in terms of emergency medical care, in our country, especially after the Dobbs decision was passed, there are very many examples, sadly, of women who, for example, were going through miscarriage, who were denied care at an emergency room because of the fear that the people there, the healthcare providers there had, that they'd be somehow breaking the law. There's an example of a woman, she went to the emergency room while she was having a miscarriage, denied care. She went back, denied care. Only when she contracted sepsis did they give her care. So this is what's happening in real time in our country. And I think on this issue, it is critically important that we understand this is not some intellectual debate. Every day in America, there are people suffering, silently suffering in many cases. And we must agree that we should have a perspective on this that is really more reflective of our common sense of what is in the best interest of empathy and understanding.
You've called on Congress to act,
Yes.
To try to pass federal legislation that would restore some of the protections of Roe.
Yeah.
Do you think that that is remotely likely?
Elections matter. I would encourage everyone who cares about this issue to make sure you are registered to vote. Go to vote.gov to make sure you are registered and make sure everyone you know who cares about this issue is registered. Why? Because to your point, Congress has the ability to put back in place the protections that the Supreme Court took away. Supreme Court took it, the Congress can put it back, which means put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade. And President Joe Biden has been very clear, when that happens, he will sign it. So that's about electing people to the United States Congress who appreciate and understand that the government should not be making these decisions for women.
I want to talk about two issues that you've come out in front of in recent days. In particular, in Florida, we're all familiar about the curriculum now changing for Black history that includes the idea that the enslaved gained some skills that were beneficial to them from slavery. One of the architects of that curriculum, if you will, said that your position is a kind of ideological posturing. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that this is just a matter of whether one chooses to speak fact and truth or not. And it's pretty much that simple. I don't think that this is subject to any ideological debate to say that people who were enslaved did not benefit from slavery, period. And I'll say this also, because it almost seems ridiculous to have to say what I just said, that enslaved people do not benefit from slavery. There are so-called leaders, extremists, who are attempting to require in our nation an unnecessary debate with the intention, I believe, to try and divide us as Americans. Stop. Stop.
As recently as Monday, you slammed what you called extremists on immigration as inhumane, outrageous, and un-American. Busloads of migrants have been dropped off right at your doorstep by some GOP-led states. Despite those tactics, you do have Republicans who are largely making inroads with Latino voters, and there are many critics, some within your own party, who say that there's more that your administration should be doing on the migration front. Do they have a point?
So, first of all, let's agree that people should not be the pawns in a political game. Human beings should not be treated as pawns in a political game. What is happening in terms of sending these migrants, most of whom have fled great harm, and sending them across the country for the sake of some political showmanship is just irresponsible. If you want to deal with the problem, then do it, if you are a leader, by participating in the solution. And one very clear solution, very significant solution, has been in front of us for years now. We need to pass immigration reform. You know, there was a time where George Bush, John McCain, others, people who differed on many other issues agreed. Let's be sensible and solution-oriented on this issue.
There are reports that say that you have the lowest approval rating of any vice president. I'm curious how much of a role, if any, that you feel race and gender play in that.
Well, there are polls that also say I have great approval ratings. I think the point that has to be made is that there are attempts to create distractions away from the accomplishments of our administration. We've created over 13 million jobs since we've been in office. Joe Biden and I have been responsible for 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in the United States, not to mention what we have done to restore America's integrity on the international stage.
On the heels of the Hunter Biden plea deal falling apart, what's your reaction to the Speaker of the House floating this idea of an impeachment inquiry?
I don't really have much to say about, again, the kind of the cinema and the grand gestures that are political games. But what I will say is this: let's get to work. The people who are in these positions of leadership, there's still so much work we need to do.
Last question for you. With regard to the candidates, not on the GOP side, but the Democratic candidates, potentially Green Party, maybe no labels. David Axelrod, President Obama's former advisor, recently said, I don't know why alarm bells aren't going off now, and they should be a steady drumbeat from now until the election. Would you say that you are heeding those alarm bells? Are you concerned?
Alarm bells about what?
Alarm bells about potentially RFK Jr., for example, who's polling in double digits, or Cornel West, or the enthusiasm behind a potential no-labels candidate taking away from your ticket.
I'll tell you, our focus has been on strengthening America and doing the work every day. That is about seeing through what we are doing to bring down the cost of health care, what we are fighting for in terms of strengthening the economy and America's families. You probably saw recently that projections around recession and inflation are very much reduced because of our economic policies. These are the things that we're focused on. And President Joe Biden and I feel very strongly that our primary focus should be on strengthening America's families and focused on the future in a way that actually lifts people up and doesn't tear people down.
Madam Vice President, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.